Hey, what's up, you guys? Welcome back to Plan and Chat, where we discuss all things self care, organization, and how to manage your family life and business all in one. So, I'm so excited to have on special guest speaker today, Rebecca Jameson, who is a financial coach who specializes in teaching law enforcement families how to manage their personal finances so they can thrive as a family in peace. And she is also a mom of two girls and law enforcement wife herself, who's been able to turn her own personal finances around alongside with her husband. And so I was super excited to invite her on to Plan and Chat because of the fact that we both recognize the value of how important it is to be able to prioritize your finances so that way you can have that peace of mind and be able to prioritize your self-care, which your finances is a part of your self-care, but a lot of the times the struggle is trying to figure out, like, how can I be able to still do things for myself while also maintaining a budget and getting things done for the family and all of those types of things. So I wanted to invite her on for this special conversation so that way we can discuss this and so you guys can get some valuable information and learn how to prioritize your finances as well as create a healthy budget for your family and work through some um, different triggers and things that you guys might be struggling with. So I'm so excited to have her come on, and let me go ahead and bring her up. All right. Hi, Rebecca.
Hi, how's it going, Apollonia?
It's going well. Thank you so much for coming on Plan and Chat. This is going to be fun. We already started to have like such a good beginning conversation, and was like,
Yes.
wow, we need to go ahead and start talking, like doing the Plan and Chat. So this is fun. So can you just tell everybody a little bit more about yourself and how you got started in becoming a financial coach and starting your own financial journey?
Absolutely. So, my husband and I have been together for 6 years now. And so, when we got together, we literally started dating the day before he graduated from the academy. And so, I've been with him alongside his journey as a sheriff's deputy. And once we got married, we did the whole combining of the finances. And
Mhm.
so we've been married for about 4 years, almost 4 years now.
Okay.
And just last year, we really realized that, okay, we might have put ourselves in a little bit of a financial pickle because I think, as most couples do, and especially most law enforcement couples, due to the stresses of the job, we like to kind of blow off steam and have fun and go on trips and do a lot of those things where we're spending a lot of money. And so my husband and I found ourselves in that situation. And it was last July. I was 6 months pregnant with our second daughter, and we sat down and we had made a series of uh, poor financial decisions, pretty much like one right after the other. And it really kind of caught up with us. And so we sat down on our 1 week vacation that we take each year, and we kind of tallied up all of our debts, and we realized that we had racked up between the two of us about $70,000 in debt, just a little over $70,000 in debt. And it was kind of eye-opening to us, like, oh my gosh, we have been spending, and we justified a majority of it based on the fact that he can work overtime.
Right.
And so we found ourselves in this never-ending cycle of buying things because he can work overtime, and then he has to work overtime in order for us to buy all the things. So it's just repeats itself. And so once we recognized that, we were like, we need to break this cycle and start to become intentional with our money.
Yeah, like I can totally relate to that because that's one thing that I feel like a lot of, especially those who are law enforcement wives, like you and I, is like we know the money is there and our guys know the money is there, like
Mhm.
because they're so understaffed and it's just always that way and will forever be that way.
Mhm.
So the opportunity to make money and on demand for the most part is totally there. and it becomes so second nature to them to where it's not even a thing. And that's why a lot of people end up getting into this career, which is great. But like you said, it's like such a double-edged sword if you are not careful which way you're swinging the knife,
Mhm.
because you're just like you guys said. And then our guys are definitely very stressed because of the job. They just need some form of a break, but that can end up biting them in the butt, and our families too, because we get ourselves put in this situation to now we're living off of the overtime,
Mhm.
and in order to just maintain, they have to work like 3 or 4 days of overtime to
Yep.
compensate. In which I totally understand, because that's our situation as well. Like, it is a beautiful thing because it does provide you more of like freedom in a sense, and
Mhm.
also a lifestyle that you can choose to be in, like with us being able to be stay at home. And I know we discussed, you guys are also considering that as an option too, so you can be
Mhm.
full-time stay at home mom as well. Like, it is great in that aspect, but it is a lot of pressure and adds like an additional stress that can become very toxic and even more unhealthy. So, what was finally like the push where you guys recognize, like, no, we need to stop this and reframe our mindset on how we look at your overtime and how we
Mhm.
look at your job, so that way we can make sure that we keep you, like your husband, healthy, also you healthy and sane, because that's
Mhm.
another level of stress that a lot of people do not discuss, of how stressful it is to be a law enforcement wife. Um,
Right.
and then when you also add on the struggles of the financial obligations, it can become a hot mess. So like, what was like the straw? Like, I know you kind of share it, but like, what was like
Yes.
the
So we found out I was pregnant in January of 2021 with our second daughter. And at that time, we were getting ready to do a complete home renovation on our kitchen, to the point where we were actually going to push the front of our house out, and kind of break down this wall and make an open concept in our home. And so, but once we found out that I was pregnant, like we have a 1,200 square foot home, so we have a pretty small home. The walls just like got even smaller once we realized they were like, we're gonna have two kids in here and us, like that's just a lot. So we wanted to upgrade and get a bigger home. And so, mind you, this was at the beginning of the real estate boom last year,
Mm.
and we searched for probably about 2 months. We put our home up for sale, sold within 4 days,
Oh wow.
and we were under contract with the contingency that we needed to find a home in order for us to proceed with the sale. And we just ran into the situation where left and right, we were just getting outbid by 40, 50, $60,000 over what the bids that we were placing. And so eventually we just, more so me, I was exhausted. I was at this point, I was 3, 4 months pregnant. I was like, I can't do this anymore. The stress has got me up here. Like, we're just gonna have to deal with having a small home and two kids. Like, I'm not doing this anymore.
Hmm.
And so we left that whole real estate thing kind of battered and bruised, and mentally. And we were sitting on about $20,000 that we had saved up as a down payment. And, we just kind of had this emotional trigger and didn't really have a purpose now for that $20,000. And we decided, one, that I needed a bigger car, which, yes, I probably could have got away with having two kids in my Toyota Camry. It wouldn't have been the end of the world, but I wanted an SUV, something a little bit bigger to, carry around all the things that you need for two kids. And then as soon as I got my car, my husband was like, well, I want a new car too. And so it just kind of like snowballed. And then we were doing like home repairs and like, small little renovation projects. And pretty soon that $20,000 got depleted down to 5,000 really quickly. And so that was kind of like the start. We still didn't really learn our lesson at that point. It wasn't until my husband took his dad to a San Jose Earthquakes game, which is a soccer team. And he bought like these box seat tickets, and they were sitting front row and everything. And he came home and he's like, I really want to get us season tickets for the San Jose Earthquakes. It's like, but I really want to get these box seat season tickets. And I have such a hard time telling him no, especially because he works so many hours. And I mean, like he was pulling anywhere from 65 to 75 hours of,
Overtime.
and so it was, another full-time job on top of what he was already doing.
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, okay. So I didn't even really ask how much it was going to cost. And then, so we signed the contract for it. It's a 3-year contract. And then I find out it's, about $5,000 a year, a little over $5,000 a year for a 3-year contract. And like probably a week later, he came back to me and he was like, I think I made a mistake. And I was like, yeah, I think we both made a mistake. Like,
that's a lot.
No.
Oh my God, that's a lot.
Yeah. So he tried to get out of the contract. It was unsuccessful. Fortunately, with the tickets, we were able to, put some of them up for sale and recoup some of our money, which that has helped. But at that point, we realized we have a problem. We are not being smart with our money.
Right.
And if we keep going the way that we're going, we're not going to set ourselves up so our family can be successful in the future. We really wanted our little girls to grow up in a better financial situation than both of us did. So for me, I wouldn't say that growing up, my family, I would consider them middle class. I never really knew, quote unquote, money struggles growing up. I knew when we didn't have enough money for things like, extra trips or, Christmas might be light this year, those types of things. But, my husband grew up poor. And so we both come from different money backgrounds, but we both knew that we wanted better for our kids. And so that's really kind of what led up to us deciding that. And, like I said, we sat down, we wrote out all of our debts, realized how much we had actually racked up, and knew like we have to make a change, because if we keep going the way that we're going, it's not going to be good for our family.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's crazy. Like that box, but I completely understand and relate to you, because there is that sense of you don't want to be the bad person, right?
Mm-hmm.
To be like, no, you can't do this, especially when your husband is the one working so much, and they do work a lot of overtime. And so, yeah, you want them to be able to enjoy the fruits of their labor. But when you find yourself locked, like that's a $15,000 contract.
Mm-hmm.
And then that was aside from like any credit card debt, like your mortgage and all of those things. And so you recognize like, wow, we have a big problem and we definitely need to really, really deal with this.
Mm-hmm.
And so you mentioned something that I think is really, really important that a lot of people kind of overlook, is that you and your husband come from 2 different financial backgrounds. And so whenever that happens, now you have to try to figure out shared perspectives, and also understanding each other's financial, I believe you mentioned it called financial identity. And so the calling it financial identity is something new. So I would love for you to elaborate a little bit more on that. Like, what does it actually mean as far as recognizing what your financial identity is, so that way you can understand your emotional triggers better and start making better choices?
Right. Yes, absolutely. So I begin to realize that we, as people, we carry identities in many different aspects of our lives.
Yeah.
So we don't just have one identity. We have, our family identity. We have our parenting identity. We have our work identity. We have our, personal relationship. We have identities in so many different places of our lives. And a lot of them are identities that we just either accept as they are what they are, or there's identities that we have worked towards and grown and nourished and have really kind of perfected in our own lives. So for me, I always felt like my professional identity was like my top, like that's what defined who I was.
Mm-hmm.
And and so all the other identities in my life kind of took a back seat, and I didn't really pay attention to them. And it really kind of threw me for a loop when I became a mom, because now I had this whole other identity that I needed to cultivate, and I needed to work on, because now I'm responsible for now two little lives that are I give so much of myself to.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we tend to lose a little bit of ourselves
Oh yeah.
once when we transition into parenthood, and it's really hard to try to figure out that new identity. And so as I kind of realized this, I was like, you know what, that kind of portrays into how we manage our money as well. You Most people don't want to talk about finances, and a
Right.
lot of times it's just because it makes us uncomfortable. Well, that discomfort is an identity that you've created for yourself,
Mm-hmm.
right? You have told yourself internally that either one, I'm not good with managing money. Two,
Mm-hmm.
I don't really need to worry about it. Three, it is what it is, kind of thing. There are so
Mm-hmm.
many different things that we tell ourselves about money that let us off the hook about actually dealing with it.
Right.
And the truth of the matter is our financial identity, we need to really work on cultivating that, because finances dictate how successful you are in life. And I don't just mean how much money you make, because you can, make $30,000-$40,000 a year and still have a successful, healthy financial situation, because you've learned to live within your means. So it's really about learning how to manage your money smart,
Mm-hmm.
and not just spending your money on a bunch of frivolous things because you're trying to keep up with the appearances of what you might see on social media, or
Mm-hmm.
what you see in the movies of what other people are doing. And it's really about recognizing what you want to do in your own life, what your priorities are, and setting your intentions, and making sure that the financial decisions that you make go in line with your goals and priorities.
Mm. And so, like, with that being said, it's more important first in order to recognize your financial identity. It's like you're like what you're saying is, and I talk a lot with my clients and in all my videos about your triggers and
Mhm.
how your emotions play a major effect in your physical actions, whether that is your focus is weight loss or anything. It doesn't matter what it is, your emotional triggers are going to let you know like what's going on, and so that way you can create an action plan to do something about
Mhm.
it. And how you respond to those emotional triggers is actually what will determine whether you have healthy finances or whether you don't. And I
Yeah.
think that was so helpful that you said like your financial identity, some of it is behavioral learned and some of it is cultivated.
Mhm.
And I think that's so helpful to recognize, because then that gives us permission and power and ownership to be like, I have the choice to change this if I so choose. And I feel like that's so helpful, especially in today's financial situation. We're coming out of this pandemic, and
Mhm.
a lot of people either lost their jobs or they're blessed enough to have that financial security, but we got the stimulus, and some of us that money's gone and some of us that money's saved up, and so
Mhm.
that what you're saying is how we respond to the money that we receive is what actually creates the lifestyle that we want. And I think that's so important because, especially when we're talking about entrepreneurship and prioritizing your self care, there can be a very big conflict because, especially with being a mompreneur,
Mm-hmm.
our mindset is like, I have to work, 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 and I have to get this and achieve this so my family can do this, which is great. But then there's also that self denial, which also, when you're trying to build a business, there you got to learn how to do it well, because you can extremely burn yourself out and burn your money out too, in this pursuit of,
Mm-hmm.
like what you said, is my identity wasn't my career. And I feel like, especially for us, like, it's great to be a mompreneur, because like now your purpose is tied to something so much stronger. But also, in that pursuit of trying to make your business work and also trying to be the best mom that you can, like, you can very much burn yourself out and overcompensate when you are
Mm-hmm.
burning out and overspending things to
Oh, yes.
overcompensate when you're not able to be there. And so that's so crazy.
Yeah.
But
And for me, that is one of my spending triggers, is when I feel either exhausted, burnt
Mhm.
out,
Right,
stressed.
right.
I in my comfort comes from like spending money. And
Right.
so, and once I recognized that about myself, that just like unlocked this whole new level of being able to be intentional with my money. And now that doesn't say that I don't still indulge in those moments, because I do occasionally, but I'm aware of it. And
Right.
I recognize that what I what I'm doing, I am making a choice to do this, and it's not my emotions that are controlling me. I understand that I'm feeling these emotions right now, but I'm still making this decision, and I'm aware that I'm making this decision.
Mhm.
And for me, it's Starbucks. And go into this whole story about my first trimester being pregnant. The only thing I wanted to eat was a bacon Gouda sandwich, and actually, it was the only thing I could eat. Everything else made me throw up. And so
That sucks.
I know. And so you can imagine how much money I spent at
Starbucks
Starbucks in
came
my first
up.
trimester. And once I actually sat down and calculated it out, I think it was upwards of like $200 a month I was spending at Starbucks. And once I realized that, it was like, oh no, like we can't do this. And
Mhm.
my husband had his side of things that he was frivolously spending money on, and I call them micro purchases. They're those small purchases that you make and you justify it because it's not that much money, but when you do it on a daily basis, it actually
Adds up very
calculates out to being a lot of money at the end of the month. Um, so we each had our own little micro purchases that were slowly draining our bank account each month. And so now I definitely don't deny myself that comfort if I really feel like I just need it in that moment. But again, like I said, I'm aware of that trigger, and I recognize it for what it is, and it helps me to make smart decisions in that moment.
right. Like, so reckon is like, okay, I understand. I'm just stressed out and I just really want something sweet and I don't feel like baking. So I'm
Hmm.
going to, if I go to Starbucks, I understand this is a couple dollars, but it is going to save me time. This, like,
Hmm.
there's like a whole entire, it sounds like there's like this whole entire conversation and pep
Oh, yes. Yeah, and then I follow it up with when my husband and I, because my husband works Graves, so our conversations happen like around 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. And so I'll tell him, we'll be like, by the way, I'm just going to call myself out right now. I went to Starbucks today. And I'll be like, this is why. And so we have those conversations with each other, not because I feel like I need to get permission from my husband to spend our money that we both earn together,
right.
but because it keeps an open and honest conversation between us about our money.
Right.
And I'm not trying to hide anything from him, and he's not trying to hide anything from me. And by being able to be open and honest about those conversations and not be, triggered by them, it really helps our communication and our relationship.
Right. And I think that's so important because, like, especially like you said, you guys are coming from two different types of backgrounds, financial identities. And so having to be open and honest about that is great in helping your relationship grow and develop, because that way, they can either help you become more aware of, like, hey, this is you're trying to do. Remember, we talked about this and blah blah. Or they can also make you feel a lot more comfortable and letting
Mhm,
you know, like, this is going to be okay. We
mhm.
have these things. It's okay. Permission to do this. Not like you
Yep.
said, not that you needed your husband's permission, but also for yourself, because sometimes there is some level of anxiety that comes up whenever you're trying to make a purchase. And
Mhm,
even what it doesn't matter if it's Starbucks or if it's like something major, it
mhm.
can be like, okay, all right, it's going to be, because I find myself doing that, especially like when it comes to investing in something for my business. I'll feel bad in a
Mhm.
way, just because, especially with business investing, right? It doesn't matter what it is, you're having to put the money up front,
Yep.
and you don't know when the return is necessarily going to really come back.
Mhm.
Whereas with making a purchase at the store, like, oh, I'm going to give them this $5 and I get my treat right then and there. So there's
Mhm.
instant gratification that
Yep.
satisfies that. But with entrepreneurship, it is a lot more scary in a sense, because you're in, like, okay, if I'm investing this amount of money in a coach, I know this is going to help me and this and that, but I feel so guilty because I know the family needs this and blah blah. And so we can definitely hold ourselves back from something that we may need,
Mhm.
even, and that will help us eventually make more money, get more time with our families and all of those things, but hold ourselves back from that instead of going to the store and doing our little $5 Starbucks, when if we would have disciplined that habit, we would easily be able to afford something that's really going to be a
Mhm.
better investment for the long term. So for a mompreneur who is kind of in that boat and kind of really struggling with finding that balance, what would be some financial advice that you would give her that is something tangible for her to be able to do and implement with her family as well as in her business, to be able to manage her finances better as well as her emotional triggers around her finances?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would first consider, checking in with yourself whenever you're making a purchase. And in the beginning, it might seem a bit much, but it's not a practice that you're going to do for the rest of your life. It's just kind of in the beginning, whenever you're going to make a purchase, is try to determine whether or not what you're purchasing is because of a trigger. For me, I was able to understand what my emotional triggers are in terms of my spending. Doesn't mean that I stop spending my money on those things. No, but I also am able to rein those purchases back when I recognize what they are. Um, the other thing is, communicate with your partner, and it really helps to not just communicate at your partner, but communicate with them and then dream together. Both of you
I
sit
love that.
down and talk about what you want your financial future to look like, because most of us don't really have those conversations about what we want. We assume that through contributing to retirement at our jobs, that eventually the retirement's going to be there and we're going to rely on that. But do we really know whether or not that retirement is going to meet our lifestyle needs? Most of us don't. Most of us don't understand, especially, 20 years from now, when 20, probably 30 years, I think my husband's probably going to work until he can't work anymore. But, but we don't know what the state of, the economy is going to be at that time, and whether or not what we've contributed to our retirement is going to meet our needs. So dream about what we want in the future, but then also what we'd like to do, 2 years from now, family vacations that we might want to take, or, eventually upgrading your home to something a little bit bigger, just things like that. Dream about what you want your family's lifestyle to be. And then start having those conversations about how do your finances play into that?
Mm-hmm.
How does what your current financial situation, or how is your current financial situation holding you back from those dreams, from achieving those dreams? And I think that's a huge piece. And in all honesty, my husband and I did not really start talking about finances until last year. We missed out on, 4 or 5 years of our marriage not talking about finances, where if we would have just done that a little bit earlier, we'd be much better off right now. Now, I'm super proud of our journey and how much we've accomplished, but I also recognize that the sooner that you have these conversations, the better it's going to be for your family in the future.
Right. And I think that, like you said, that is so important, especially for, families in general, but especially for law enforcement families where the extra income and the overtime is just so readily available.
Mm-hmm.
And so this way it kind of helps our spouses be able to say, okay, when I'm working this overtime, this is what it's going to go to. And I think that's so helpful because, again, it recognizes, like, all right, these are what our goals are. This is exactly what we want. And if this is our goal, then we need to have a specific amount that we need
Mm-hmm.
to make. And that has to go towards that in order for us to meet our goal. And so that kind of helps you create that budget and those boundaries with, for us as the wives and the ones managing every single thing else while they're out there working so much,
Mm-hmm.
it helps us have a better standpoint of what our real, like, family meal plan needs to be like, clothing and things for the kids, extracurricular activities and all of those expenses. Like, that really helps us being able to set those boundaries, or even within our own businesses, kind of recognize, like, all right, if we're dedicating this much money to go towards savings, like, and we have an opportunity with our businesses, whether it's coaching or whether we have product based, like, now we can have a better idea of what to gauge our own, like, business income to. Because I
Mm-hmm.
know that's something that I kind of struggle with, in a sense of, like, okay, I know I have these big goals, but I don't know how, like, with trying to manage the family time and how to achieve that, it can be a little difficult in how to make that income come about. So what would you give some advice for a mom or a Leo wife who is also in the beginning stages of trying to build her own business while her husband is gone and literally gone almost all the time? And it's not because they don't want to be there, but it's just the nature of the
Mm-hmm.
job, and how to better gauge and manage her own emotional triggers that get triggered from all
Mm-hmm.
of that pressure, to keep her from spending money. Like, do you recommend, like, a cash envelope system? Do you recommend, like, freezing credit cards? Like, what would be the best advice
Yeah.
that you would give her?
So well, number one, I actually have a free 16-page workbook that's accessible through my website. It's my bulletproof budget workbook, and it takes you through step by step exactly how to set up your budget. It's exactly how I set up my budget, and how to work through it. And not only that, it walks you through how to set up savings goals as well, and what you should be saving for, and things like that. So it's definitely challenging. And here's the crux of it: is you have to want to do it. That's the
Hmm.
biggest piece. Is it's not enough to know that you should do it.
Right.
You you have to have that internal motivation of, I am doing this because it is beneficial to my family for XYZ. And so, I always start my clients out with, I need you to develop your why. And the why is not, I want to get out of debt. I
Mhm.
want to save up for a house. I want to, put savings in my kids' college fund. Like those are tools that we use to get to the why. The why is actually a feeling. The
Right.
why is because we don't get too motivated by the external tasks that we need to do, right? That's not the motivating factor. The motivating factor is what you feel internally.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's going to get you to to the goal line, to where you want to be. And so there's a reason why you want to pay off your debt. There's a reason why you want to save up and buy a house. There's a reason why you want to make sure your kids have money for college. So what is that why that's going to keep you motivated? And
Right.
once you get that established and you feel it on a daily basis, that's going to motivate you to stick with this financial journey, because it's not easy,
Mm-hmm.
because society trains us not to focus on these things. By
Right.
focusing on this, you are going against the grain,
Mm-hmm.
against what everybody else is doing. And that's the hard piece, because sometimes it feels like you're all alone, because you'll be there making sacrifices and your friends are out doing things and kind of looking at you weird, like we know you make money, like why aren't you doing this with us, kind of thing, you know what I mean? Like, and so you have to strongly know why you are doing this, and just focus on that end goal. And if you can hyper focus and you can, you know, be intentional with, getting on a budget and tracking it. And I tell my clients, budgets are meant to be flexible.
Right.
It's not, set it and forget it type of
Right.
thing. Like, it's, and I think what happens is a lot of people try a budget and then they go over on like a certain budget line and they're like, oh, I can't do this. I messed
Right.
up. Well, if you messed up, really, for me, what I do, because we go over budget lines every single month. There is never a month where I hit my budget on the nose perfectly. Like, no. But what I have to do is, okay, I spent a little bit more on the kids this month than I was intending to. So now I got to figure out where in my budget I can pull that money to cover the extra money that I spent on the kids, because the kids needed a summer wardrobe and I didn't budget for that. So it's
Right.
like, things like that. It's just you just need to focus on your why, and then whenever the challenges arise, you tackle them one by one. And
Right.
but the whole time, just hyper focus on why you are doing this, because that's what's going to get you to the end.
Right. And like that's so important, because even with my coaching clients, like that's why we do a very deep journaling and reflection in
Mhm.
helping you heal your mental, emotional, and your spiritual like wellness, what I call the wellness training. It's so important because you have to really hone in on that, is what you're talking about, is rediscovering your why and also recalling back your power, because it is going to get hard. And
Mhm.
like what we're talking about, a lot of things that Rebecca is mentioning, it is not just have to do with the finances. Like what she said, this is your financial identity. Or if you guys follow me for a long time, this is your financial wellness. Like this is just one category of your entire wellness wheel. But it is such a major factor because it triggers and affects everything else. And so, like you were saying in the beginning, like if our finances aren't in order, it holds us back from being able to live the lifestyle that we truly want. And so, having the big vision and the deeper connection of why you budget and why you manage your finances the way that you do is what is going, like you said, what's going to keep you moving forward. Because again, you're now, instead of trying to work up this uphill battle of I have to do this, I have to do this, and working from this pain point of I don't feel like doing this and blah 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 blah. Obviously, it's always like waking up and getting punched in the face, or waking up every single morning with your kids jumping in your face talking about mommy, I'm hungry,
Yeah.
mommy, I need this. Nobody likes to do that, right? This is why in self-care it's like having a morning routine is everything, because no one wants to wake up with kids in their face. None of us do, okay? Like that is the instant way to have an anxiety attack, get into a
Mhm.
depression cycle, and have all your have all your triggers like hit at one time.
Sensory overload.
Right. And then that's when we're like, it's an add to cart kind of day, buying all of the things because we're so stressed and triggered. And so that, like what you're saying, it feeds into our emotion, our financial identity because you're like, I'm stressed. I just need to buy something and I'll be happy. Like,
Yep.
yes, you might be happy in the moment, but then when that bill comes in, you're again, the next spiral hits. Oh my God, that's so funny because I'm
Yep.
sure of those of you guys who are listening are like, yep, that was me yesterday because we all know. And like you're saying, society culturally makes it so easy because all you have to do is go to one website where you're selling something and then check your email and these pixels are coming up to buy this
Mm.
and that. And so you have to be very, very disciplined with understanding like I am doing this because I want this more than I want this purchase.
Mhm.
Like I want my dreams, and I want my goals, I want my business to be successful. So I'm going to invest in myself with this coach to help me launch this and do that. I'm going to invest and save this amount of money so we can go ahead and pay cash for this trip and not put any more on credit cards. Like
Yes.
all of those things, it comes from that deep intentional desire. Like I want this. And I think that's so important for women to really recognize is like living in a man's world. And especially for, I feel like, especially for law enforcement wives, like our men are manly men,
Mhm.
period, point blank. They are manly, manly men.
Yep.
So there's like, no, you got to get in there and you got to do it. And that's just also the environment that they're in. So they work on the hustle and grind all the
Mhm.
time mentality. And for us as women, that is an extremely toxic environment for us to be in, and it causes us to be depressed and that causes us to go shopping.
Mhm.
And so we have to work and reframe it and turn it into this feminine way that we work better is working through our desires and working for the things that we want. And we can do it in a happier and healthier way so that way we can work in our businesses as a way like I get to do this because I know that at the end of the day I'll be able to do this. And when we're happier, we can be happier for our spouses, we can be happier for our kids, we can be happier paying a bill. Like,
Yeah. I love doing my budget. Like that is it for me, that is a form of self-care because it
right.
helps me to feel centered and it
Yes.
helps me to feel like, okay, we have a plan in place, even though that plan might fluctuate throughout the month, but we have our baseline plan and that gives me stability and that
Right.
helps me go into the month knowing that I don't have to think
Yes.
about, oh, is this bill going to come out and, and we don't have enough money in the account because we haven't got paid yet. It's like I
Right.
know exactly when bills are coming out and I don't want to say exactly how much money we're going to have, but I know what that cushion is in our account throughout the month because I track it on a almost, I would say it like every few days I'm tracking my budget.
Right.
And it helps me to feel like, okay, that's one piece of the puzzle that I don't have to worry about. It's
Mhm.
not constantly sitting here in the back of my mind, hanging over me like a dark cloud. That's
Mhm.
taken care of. I can focus on other areas of my life now.
Right. Like
And
you
it
can
took us
now I can
a little
focus.
bit to get there, but you can actually get there a lot quicker than you would think.
Right. Right. And I love that too, because like I just in adding what you said, because last night is when I was decompressed because we just got back from my sister-in-law's wedding in Vegas. And so my planner, my catch up, my daily travel planner is full with receipts. And because I have a habit now of where I clean out my receipts and stuff. And I was like, oh my God, I need to clean this out and organize these receipts and then go through finances and all that. So I did that yesterday and it's been about an hour or two, but again, it was like peace. Like it's literally like me taking out my brain and like, okay, putting this there, putting this there. And when, especially when it comes to finances, is like now I just understand and know, like you said, like last month we spent this much on takeout or whatever. Well, why? Well, okay, we were super busy. So now I just have to kind of make some adjustments here. And okay, I can go back to be happy and watch a movie without feeling guilty, like is is this check gonna bounce? Is this unexpected bill? Do I got to pay this for the kids' books? Like all of those types of things. And when we're stressed like that, we also can't even focus on our business, or we can't even enjoy being with our families. So yeah, like I totally get you on that. So now let's talk about the fun stuff. What is your favorite budget system? So what's your favorite budget planner? Are you a paper planner, or are you a digital planner? Are you kind of a mix, or what would you
So
recommend?
I do, I have two budgets. So I have my monthly budget, and which I do through the Every Dollar app.
Mhm.
And then I created my own weekly budget spreadsheet that I do through Google Docs.
Okay.
And the monthly is I set that one, and it's linked to my bank account, and so I can easily assign my transactions to my budget categories, which makes that super easy. And then my weekly budget layout helps me to make sure that our expenses line up with our paychecks, because I get paid monthly, my husband gets paid biweekly, and so on most months we have three different paychecks that come in, and so I have to make sure that and this is key in my opinion for families that receive multiple paychecks, is that you need to budget either whether it's weekly or it's biweekly, um, your expenses and how they coincide with your paychecks, because that's really the first step to breaking that paycheck to paycheck cycle,
Mhm.
that some of us might find ourselves in, is knowing what bills are coming out in conjunction with the paycheck, and so what money you have to spend on your other necessities or your savings goals and things like that. So that's kind of my process, is I do my monthly budget, and I track all my transactions through that monthly budget, and then I reconcile that budget with my weekly budget, to make sure that we're not spending more money outside of what we're getting in terms of paychecks each week. So
And so you mentioned an Excel spreadsheet. And so
mhm.
everything, all your budgeting is electronic, right?
Yes.
Okay, okay. And so for someone who may not be tech savvy, or
Mhm.
they get overwhelmed by all the tabs, like that's one for me. I can't not do like 20 million tabs. I
Totally
can't.
get that.
Yeah, it's too much for me and my brain, and as well as all of the apps and click click click, like that for me personally is difficult.
Mhm.
So I am more of a paper planner. And so what would be your recommendation based off of how you plan? What would you recommend to someone to start with a good budgeting planning system?
Well, you had actually suggested to me to check out Budget Mom. And
Yeah, I
so
love her budget
I
planner.
started researching her products, and her budget workbook, I think I would say is probably one of the best products out there in terms of budgeting, via pen and paper.
Hmm.
It's super in depth. She's got this whole like kit that you can buy, and it's got one book for each month, and it's really intuitive. I was very impressed with the product that she developed, and so I would definitely recommend something like that. But you can also, there's so many great Etsy shops that have their digital downloads, in terms of not just planners, but different budgeting tools and things like that, that you can it's just a print and write. You really, for me, I've found is you just kind of have to do a little bit of research to find out what's going to work best for you. Like you mentioned, you're more of the person who is, I need pen to paper, write it down, have it on me in my planner portfolio, and be able to access it like that. Whereas I'm more of the person's like, I want it on my phone, click, click, click. I know exactly what to do. And so you really have to find what you're comfortable with and what's going to make sense to you. And that's further going to help you, because if you have a process that doesn't click in your mind, you're not going to be able to stick with it. So
Right.
you might have to do a little bit of research. Definitely, YouTube is an amazing platform to see how many different people do set up their budgets. I follow, a few personalities on YouTube that, whether it's the cash envelope system, or which that's super popular right now. If you haven't watched any cash envelope videos, I suggest that, you can just search on YouTube cash envelope and see what people are doing in terms of that. It's very fascinating. For me, I've never been somebody who keeps a lot of cash on hand, and so that makes me a little nervous. But it's very fascinating how people set up their finances just strictly using cash, and how they budget strictly just using cash. So there are so many different ways that you can manage your finances. It's just a matter of finding what works best for you.
Okay. And like, so with your coaching program and how you're working with your clients, like you actually help them like discover what their financial identity is. So that way, because like we said, you mentioned budgeting is not something a lot of people want to talk about or even
Mhm.
do. So even probably some people hearing all this can be like, okay, like I know I need to get my finances in order, but they're kind of talking Greek to me. I need I need English, And so can you share a little bit more about specifically with your coaching program how you're able to help people get their finances back?
Yes. And so the biggest thing, which, and I'm sure you can attest to this as well, is most programs are, at least the way that mine's structured and that I've found with coaching, is you focus more on the behavioral aspect, right? You can teach the technical skills. The technical skills are great, and it's good to know. But the part that's going to make you the most successful is the behavioral piece. And so that's what I like to focus on overall. And a majority of my coaching time with my clients is focused on the behavioral piece. It's not so much the numbers. Well, we start with the numbers, but and I help them along the way with their budget. But for most people to be successful with their finances, they have to be able to understand their behaviors with money and why they have those behaviors with money. They have to be able to recognize their triggers and where those triggers come from. And it's about, understanding and shifting your financial identity, because I think some of us, or probably most of us, would probably have more of a negative financial identity, whether it's, I'm just not good with money, or, I don't need to focus on my finances. There's our financial identity for a lot of us is probably geared more towards the negative. And so it's my job to help you shift that into more of a positive identity, because until you view finances and your personal finances and your relationship with money in a more positive light, it's going to be that much harder for you to be successful with your money. So with my clients, I have a lot of questions that it almost probably feels like a therapy session. I'm not a registered therapist by any means, but I've done this enough to understand that most people are triggered by external factors that influence how they handle their money. And so that's the piece that we focus on. And then we do get into the numbers, but in all honesty, you don't have to be a mathematician to understand your finances. It's really pretty streamlined, especially if you've got like an Excel workbook, or, a budgeting app that does all the math for you, and you don't even have to worry about that. You're just plugging in your numbers, and they do all the math. So I it's said that finances are 80% behavior and only 20% head knowledge. And so it's, while I focus on that 20% head knowledge, my main focus is that 80% behavioral piece. And how do we overcome the challenges that you face around money due to your mindset and your emotions around money.
Good, good, good. Yeah, that's great. And I totally relate that. So it sounds like a lot of, your coaching is very similar to mine. You're just primarily focused on
Mm-hmm.
finances, which I think is really great because you need to have that healthy relationship with money. So that way you can actually enjoy it and have that peace that you were talking about with being able to spend your money happily without the guilt,
Mm-hmm.
without the shame, because those things come up all the time anytime we go to swipe or anytime we try to give cash or any of those things. So it
Mm-hmm.
is so important to heal and work through those. So if you are someone who is a law enforcement wife or law enforcement family and you're wanting to get a better hold of your finances and want from someone and wanting to learn from someone who can relate to you personally and also with some of those experiences that only a law enforcement family like is going through, then I would highly recommend you guys connect with Rebecca. I will make sure to post her links to her Facebook and Instagram and website where you guys can connect with her. And Rebecca, actually, if you want to just share real quickly where they can connect with you at, where you're most involved.
Awesome. I show up mostly on Instagram. So I'm at Priority One FC on Instagram. And then I do also have a Facebook page, Priority One Financial Coaching. So most of my interaction is on Instagram, and then that feeds into my Facebook. And I jump on my Facebook page occasionally just to do additional posts and things like that. I do have a YouTube channel as well that I'm just starting out. So there's a few videos on there that are very short videos. So my goal was, because I think if you talk too much finances, people's eyes tend to glaze over. So I try to keep my videos short and quick, and so they're easy to watch and listen to, and it's not too much information that's going to make your head buzz.
Right, because it totally can. Because it's like finances
Uh-huh.
is like its whole own little world. So I totally
Mm-hmm.
get that. That's so funny. Well, thank you so much for hanging out with us today on Plan and Chat. This was such a great topic, and I hope you guys who watch this video and listen to the podcast got a lot of value from our discussion today. And if you want to connect with Rebecca, you guys already have gotten her contact info. And for those of you who are catching the full video on YouTube or Facebook, then you can also get all of the links and everything to connect with her and get more financial advice on her website and also on her Instagram and Facebook. So, again, thank you guys for hanging out with us. And Rebecca, thank you so much for coming on and having this discussion.
Thanks for having me. I had so much fun.
Yeah, yeah, we'll definitely have to have you come on again one time.
Yeah.
All right, you guys. Well, I hope all of you guys have a great rest of your day and can't wait to plan a chat with you again.